Today, we're doing a deep dive that honestly feels a bit like trauma forensics.
That's a good way to put it.
We're going to be peeling back the layers on some reality-shaping powers. And, well, we're treating the origins of these colossal, often destructive entities not as myths.
No, not at all. We have to look at them as intense, true biographical accounts.
Exactly. We've got this set of really harrowing source materials that detail these moments of, I guess, human or even pre-divine trauma, ambition, and the consequences that just irrevocably birthed these figures.
That's right. And our mission really is to understand how profound suffering or, this terrible ambition or even self-perfected malice.
And sometimes just simple ignorance.
Yes, sometimes just casual ignorance served as the explosive catalyst for a cosmic transformation. We're looking at these stories as pivotal historical moments. We're trying to track the psychological breakdown, the ultimate abandonment, or that consuming hunger that defined their final forms. We want to know not just what they became, but the searing, specific emotional cost of that transformation for them and for the world they now dominate.
So we're examining figures defined by crippling grief, a consuming appetite, the isolation that comes from total deception, and then finally we'll look at a system of unwavering objective justice that sort of anchors this volatile universe.
It's a necessary exploration, I think. It really gets into that thin line between human vulnerability and, well, cosmic catastrophe.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should start with the tale of accidental creation and absolute self-devouring despair. Let's start with Gruthkul, the porcelain queen. The story of Gruthkul is, it might be the most existentially terrifying of the four we're looking at.
I'd agree with that.
Because her emergence and her kingdom, her countless children, the nameless, it wasn't the result of some ancient war or a grand prophecy.
Or some terrible deal with a dark power.
No, it was the result of one young man just taking a casual walk in the wildwood. So this is our first section, the casual genesis of despair.
It's the ultimate cautionary tale, isn't it? About the power of language, and specifically the power of a true name.
So the source says this traveler, who is just described as curious, he paused near a waterfall.
And he wasn't doing anything sinister. He wasn't performing a ritual or trying to summon anything.
No, he allowed himself a flight of fancy. He imagined this powerful maternal figure sort of lurking unseen in the shadow realm.
That hidden layer of existence right next to our own.
And then he does the one thing he shouldn't have. He gave that imagined figure a name, a true name.
And we know the name Porcelain Queen is just a title, right? It's a safer way to refer to her.
Exactly. But the name he actually spoke, that, throwaway label he came up with, it carried the fundamental gravity of identification. So why? Why does that simple act of speaking a name by this anonymous young man hold the power to manifest a massive entity out of the shadow realm?
Well, it highlights a crucial metaphysical vulnerability. The shadow realm, it's immense, it's populated, but it seems to lack a certain definitive reality.
Until it's anchored.
Exactly, until it's anchored by recognition and identification from the material world. To give something a true name is to grant it a tether, a blueprint, and an immediate material purpose.
So he thought he was just daydreaming.
He thought he was indulging a whim. The source material is very clear about this, calling it idle imaginings and casual naming. It wasn't malice, it was just profound ignorance that led to a world-altering event.
And the sources make the consequence sound so immediate, so shocking, the traveler just moves on.
He has no idea.
Completely unaware of the metaphysical bomb he just detonated. But Gruthkul and her nameless children, her whole shadow kingdom, they emerge. They're pulled into our reality by that single spoken word.
And the tragedy begins right there. That idle act, the sources tell us, led to a tale of untold tragedy and pain that is still playing out even now.
It's just chilling, and you have to think about the nature of the nameless. What were they before this?
They were already suffering entities, it seems, in the shadow realm. But the naming, it gave them substance, it gave them vulnerability.
It set them up immediately to feel pain on a scale they couldn't have experienced before.
Yes, they gained reality only to become victims of history. And in this case, history was the arrival of the Val civilization.
Which brings us directly to the next part of this tragedy, the mother's catastrophe and transformation. The Val, in their expansion, just laid waste to Gruthkul's newly actualized kingdom.
But the sources, they don't really focus on the battle itself, do they?
No, not on the logistics of the war. They focus on the specific, ritualistic cruelty that sealed Gruthkul's fate.
It wasn't enough to just destroy her kingdom. The Val seemed to understand psychology, or maybe They understood how to ritually break someone.
The brutal climax was the deliberate, calculated act of arranging her slaughtered children directly at her feet.
Can you even imagine? It's an act of profound psychological violence. It's designed to completely shatter her identity as a mother.
That one image, placing the bodies of her countless children before her, that's the turning point for her entire existence. It's what changed her from this nascent accidental queen into a force of eternal anguish.
Precisely. Grief didn't just cause her pain. It became a cognitive force. The source states that grief enveloped Gruthkul, transformed her, flooded her mind with a singular thought.
To share her suffering with those who had murdered her daughters.
Her entire purpose shifted. It went from ruling or protecting to cosmic retribution through shared despair.
So she didn't just want revenge in the typical sense. She wanted a universal experience of her own agony. It became her new mandate.
And there truly is, as the source says, no fury like a mother bereaved.
But even in that total massacre, some managed to escape.
Yes, a critical minority of her shadow children, the nameless, they slipped back into the wildwood. But you can't really say they were saved.
No, they're like living repositories of her original wound.
Exactly. They multiplied, carrying an eternal lament, a sorrow without end. Their very existence as shadow beings was permanently colored by this event. It's made sharper by the loss of their mother and the kingdom she briefly established.
So they are just suffering without resolution, a constant growing echo of Gruthkul's initial trauma.
And that sets the stage for the most harrowing part of her transformation,
Right.
what the sources call her ascension through self-destruction.
Right. So Gruthkul flees north, carrying this impossible weight of loss. She finds temporary shelter among refugees loyalists from her shattered realm. These are the last people who recognize her, who see her as their queen.
And this is where human desperation turns profoundly unethical. These followers, they see her immense, consuming grief not as a psychological wound that needs healing,
But as a resource.
as a potential resource. They looked at their bereaved queen and saw a weapon, a tool for vengeance. They didn't mourn with her, they cultivated her pain.
That is just a staggering level of psychological manipulation. To intentionally nurture her sorrow, believing they could somehow control it.
And the goal was to transfigure sorrow into hatred, hatred into violence. They were trying to engineer a controllable divine weapon out of pure, raw maternal trauma.
What does that tell us about the ethical decay of a dying civilization, clinging to any hope of power?
It suggests that when people are backed against a wall, they'll justify the most horrific acts of psychological abuse if it promises survival or retribution. They didn't see Gruthkul the individual. They saw Gruthkul the engine of war,
So they fed her hatred.
and it worked,
Mm.
to a point. The queen descended into animalism and ferocity. The texts compare her to a grizzled bear, focused entirely on the hatred they were feeding her.
But they met a fatal, tragic error.
They foolishly underestimated the agony she harbored. Grief of that magnitude is not a tap you could just turn on and off.
It's oceanic force.
And the source describes that pivotal moment so beautifully and brutally. It says that like a bear caught in a physical trap, Gruthkul wrenched free.
But she didn't turn on the Vol.
No. She turned on the only people who remained loyal to her. She slew her followers to the last woman and child.
It's the ultimate act of severance, the final cutting of any connection to her previous life or kingdom.
That is the tragic pivot. The very people who offered her shelter, who were the last vestiges of her identity and loyalty, they became her final victims.
And it was through this ultimate devastation, the murder of her only remaining connection to her people, that Gruthkul ascended to divinity.
Her godhood was purchased with the blood of her last loyal subjects. So her power is fundamentally and eternally tied to absolute, final, self-inflicted loss.
And her divinity is just the manifestation of that weeping sorrow. It's not a constructive power at all.
Not in the slightest. It's purely destructive. Her ongoing agony literally shapes the world's reality. When she weeps, the earth shakes, moon eclipses black, graveyards quake, crops turn to ash as the grieving mother weeps.
She is a walking, weeping natural disaster. Her sorrow boils oceans, ravages homes, and causes famine.
Her initial trauma has become this cosmological feedback loop that infects all life.
But just when we think we have this devastating narrative of loss figured out, we hit this other layer, the disturbing, unseen truth.
Yes. A layer of immense tension is introduced by Sin, a powerful figure who knows a lot about these origins.
And he poses this chilling question that it upends Gruthkul's entire existence. He asks, I wonder if Gruthkul's would still grieve for her children if she knew the truth.
This changes everything we thought we knew about her motivation.
It really does. The source material reveals that Gruthkul's daughters were not the innocent, passive victims we assumed they were.
No, they were active political schemers. They were plotting against another emerging power, Arakali, the spiller of shadows.
And their motivation was, well, it was fear and ambition. They feared Arakali's growing power, her ability to make these miraculous potions, her intoxicating lusts. They thought she might threaten their legacy.
Their mother's new position.
Exactly. So the implication here is profound. Gruthkul's divine rage, her self-destruction, her planetary weeping, it's all built on the assumption that her children were innocent, slaughtered by the cruel Vol.
But they may have actively provoked a major conflict with a powerful entity. They may have forced the response that led to their own demise. As the source says, spiders only leave their web when you force them to.
So her tragedy is twofold. It's the horrific, unspeakable loss of her children.
Combined with the bitter, crushing irony that her divine purpose sharing her suffering with their murderers might be fundamentally misplaced. It could be rooted in a deception.
She is this eternal, cosmic force of sorrow, driven by a rage that could be completely invalidated if she ever learned the truth about her daughter's machinations.
Her power is conditional. It's not just on her isolation and her continued agony, but on her continued ignorance.
That unresolved tension is what makes her continued existence so terrifyingly potent. She's trapped in a perfect loop of manufactured grief, and the world suffers the unending consequences.
It's the ultimate example of how trauma, when manipulated and amplified first by her loyalists and maybe initially by her own children, can become a godhood that demands perpetual cosmic destruction.
All right, so moving from that tragedy of accidental naming and profound grief, we turn now to Aberath, the Cloven One.
A very different kind of transformation.
Completely different. His was driven entirely by an internal escalating ambition, and this grotesque, intellectualized appetite. This is the section we're calling the Scholar King's horrifying pursuit. He started as a highly respected figure.
Right, a renowned alchemist, often referred to as the Scholar King.
So this is a being defined by knowledge and precision, a master of chemistry and the secrets of matter.
But his quest for longevity and ultimate mastery, it curdled. It turned into something monstrous, driven by an insatiable lust for distilled spirits.
And we absolutely have to clarify what that means. This is not a mundane addiction to alcohol or something.
Not at all. It was a scientific, alchemical thirst for the life force or delectable essence of living things.
He didn't want the body, he wanted the soul or the spark of vitality itself. And the process he developed, which is described in the sources, is just deeply horrifying.
It is, because it combines his scholarly precision with utter cruelty. He used his vast knowledge of chemistry and alchemy to burn away the flesh so as to liquidate the life force within.
It sounds like an industrial process for soul extraction.
It does. He essentially found a way to weaponize chemistry to separate the vital essence from the physical form, turning living things into a consumable elixir.
And this gruesome libation he consumed with both frequency and with alacrity. So it was constant, a calculated, regular act of consumption.
And the sources are very specific about where this descent began. It wasn't with human life initially.
No, it began with animals, goats specifically.
An act of cruelty that, in this twist of self-inflicted cosmic justice, became his curse. The very life force he harvested from goats became the substance that twisted his own form.
So the Scholar King was replaced by the Cloven One, Quaffer of Souls?
His own expertise didn't elevate him to some perfected human form. It devolved him into the very beast he began experimenting on. He didn't just get cloven hooves and shaggy features. He gained the single-minded, boundless hunger of the goat, but translated to the spiritual realm.
His own cruelty became the architect of his monstrous identity.
Which brings us to the next stage, the growth of immortality and monstruosity. Because there is some debate about why he started down this path in the first place. Some sources suggest he was trying to cure some unknown affliction.
Right, viewing the life essence as the ultimate medicine.
That might offer a shred of initial human justification, a desperate man trying to save himself. However, the more chilling, and what seems to be the more likely truth, is that his thirst simply grew with his burgeoning immortality.
So power didn't satisfy him, it created a greater deficit. The longer he lived, the more his essence-consuming appetites scaled up.
Turning him into a constantly starving entity. He wasn't achieving true enlightenment, he was feeding an eternal, ever-growing biological necessity for life essence.
Immortality, in his case, became synonymous with ceaseless hunger and monstrous transformation.
And yet, bizarrely, he retained this twisted semblance of his scholarly nature. He decided he was fair determined to share his hard-won wisdom.
And how does he decide to do that? He takes a local princess.
This wasn't romance, it was a monstrous scientific inquiry into lineage and legacy.
He wanted to see what would happen when his new, soul-fueled divine state was mingled with human life. He decided to create a successor, a living manifestation of his horrifying wisdom.
9 months later, the princess gave birth to something rather unlovely, the fawn.
And the description of the birth itself is immediate and tragic. The midwife runs screaming from the tent. This child, born on a cold, moonless night, hairy and with stubby horns, was as wild and wicked as the shaggy god himself.
This birth is the beginning of the Goatman race, but it's crucial to analyze the psychological trauma inflicted upon the mother.
Yes, that's the next part. The folklore says a mother will always love her child, but the mother of the fawn was immediately shunned.
She tried to shelter him, but she became a pariah. She was subjected to whispers of consorting with a foul beast. Her life became a constant struggle against societal shame and isolation.
And the source details how that exhaustion and shame eventually broke her. It led to this profound moment of despair.
She took the hideous boy far away to the cliffs, intending to commit a double suicide, to cast both herself and him into the crushing ocean below.
The intention of shared death really highlights the totality of her despair. She couldn't bear to live without him, but she couldn't bear to live with him in the world.
But at the final moment, she changed her mind, at least about her own death. She seized a large rock and struck her son on the head, leaving him inert and bleeding on the cliffside.
It's an act of violence born not of hate, but of the absolute limit of her suffering. She abandoned him.
But the fawn survived. His thick, bony skull took the brunt of the blow without cracking. The trauma of that, the blow, the abandonment, the isolation, it must have been immense.
He tried to follow his mother but got lost and vanished into the wilds.
And years later, the consequences of that abandonment and trauma returned in force. The lost child reappeared as a terror, haunting Rayclast's soaring cliffs.
The inherited monstrous nature in the childhood trauma had cemented, and the fawn had produced offspring creatures as twisted and vile as their father.
And this is the foundation of the horrifying Goatman race. Their nature is defined by one core principle inherited from the father's consumption: hunger.
They possess a goat's ability to eat anything. It drives them in a relentless pursuit of anything edible. Their entire existence is just pure, desperate, all-consuming hunger.
Just like Aberrath.
And their method of attack is brutally efficient. They attack from above, smashing their prey underfoot with cloven hooves. If the victim survives that, they're then subjected to a barrage of savage headbutts. They are the ultimate physical expression of relentless, mindless hunger born from a scholar's ambition.
So what is Aberrath's ultimate divine purpose in all this?
Well, the Goat King himself knew not of war, only the joy at turning life into ash. His goal is cosmic, but it's defined entirely by consumption.
The aspiration is terrifyingly simple and totalizing. The cloven ones, his legacy, shall subjugate every creature on earth.
And as such, all creatures need be consumed.
The consumption of souls, the distillation of essence, is the only path to what Aberrath calls the ecstasy of true enlightenment.
But is it true enlightenment, or is it just the self-justification of a monstrous appetite that has achieved cosmic scale?
He convinced himself that consuming life was a scholarly pursuit, and now he is propagating that belief throughout his entire race. It's the ultimate intellectualizing of evil.
He took a base, selfish desire for longevity and transformed it into a divine mandate for universal consumption.
He teaches his children that the only way to feel complete is to consume the essence of others.
And the folklore that surrounds this entity, it serves as a chilling sensory warning for the common folk.
Yes, if you hear the bleating of the fawn, run away. If you hear the demon goat playing his flute and the clipping of cloven hooves approaching your path, you must pray for the gods to hold you mute and bless the fire on your hearth.
It's a primal terror rooted in the cold, calculated failure of a scholar king. So we've charted the paths of grief and consumed ambition. Now we turn to Tangmazu, the trickster.
And this is perhaps the most psychologically complex of these powerful entities, a god born from unbearable childhood trauma and the perfection of lies.
Right. And he is experienced not as a physical force like Gruthkul's earthquakes or a physical hunger like Aberrath, but purely as a psychic echo.
Tangmazu occupies the dark, isolating reaches of the mind. He manifests as mocking laughter, strange whispers, and he's intrinsically linked to the worst psychological states a person can endure: depression, paranoia, hatred.
He is the god of twisted illusions and the very birth of fear. His domain is not a physical kingdom, it is the erosion of sanity.
And his existence is incredibly ancient. It hints at a history that predates many known empires. We know this because of markings treated in ancient Korean myths as something that needed to be sealed away or imprisoned.
Which suggests early civilizations immediately recognized the danger of this specific kind of psychological terror and tried to neutralize it.
And the key to understanding a god so tied to mental anguish is found in these fragmented pieces of knowledge. The history is revealed through strange physical artifacts, these gray splinters, recovered from unidentified ruins.
And this lost culture, they taught new knowledge not through texts, but by imbuing emotions into jewelry.
That concept alone is fascinating, isn't it?
It's incredible. Imagine knowledge transmitted as pure emotional resonance. So when researchers handle these splinters, they receive knowledge directly as feeling and memory.
Which, when assembled, coalesce into a coherent biography. It suggests a culture that prioritized feeling and sensory experience over abstract logic.
It also made them uniquely vulnerable to the kind of psychic manipulation Tangmazu would later master. Their emotional memory became the pathway to understanding their own destruction.
The initial visions Dream Daughter and I reveal the essential contrast needed for the trauma to take root. They show a peaceful, tranquil place, a rare haven from the world's ills, just full of smiles and calm.
It wasn't a powerful empire, it was a safe community, a place of profound emotional safety.
And that tranquility is the perfect backdrop against which the most violent psychological trauma unfolds.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The catalyst that turned a vulnerable child into a cosmic manipulator. Dream Third is the nightmare that defines his entire existence.
The peaceful haven, the sanctuary.
Mm.
It was abruptly bloodied. Everyone was dead, mutilated.
And the central horror was the specific cause, articulated by the victim himself, all because of a harmless little lie I told, the kind any child might.
The disproportionate consequence is what shattered his reality. An innocent, minor childhood transgression, the sort of lie any child tells to avoid trouble, led to immediate, unimaginable carnage and mass death.
The trauma isn't the lie itself, it's the horror of the resulting slaughter being pinned entirely on his small action.
And crucially, the cruelty did not end there. He was forced to internalize the horror. The text says, "They made me watch the resulting carnage."
He was left completely alone, psychologically traumatized, carrying the total guilt of his small, innocent transgression magnified into absolute destruction.
In that deep isolation and agony, he made a terrible, specific vow of vengeance. He didn't vow to simply kill them back.
No, he vowed to inflict the same psychological terror that had been inflicted on him. He vowed to make them suffer.
Specifically, he vowed to darken the places they felt safest, to turn their very homes into prisons of paranoia and fear. He chose psychological torture as his method of repayment.
And that specific choice is key to his godhood. He didn't seek physical power. He sought the ability to perfectly recreate his own profound sense of betrayal and terror in others.
And he succeeded. He described seeing countless faces twisted in agony and misery. He kept hurting them, driven by that vow, becoming the master of deceit and illusion.
But here's a critical psychological turning point, the realization that vengeance is a hollow vessel.
Right. He achieved his goal, but it never made me feel better. It just made the void bigger. He woke up from that vision feeling empty. His successful malice only amplified his own initial trauma.
This emptiness, this cavernous void created by effective but meaningless malice, it paved the way for the final transformation.
In Dream 4, he realized what he was. He was hollow, a liar, a torturer, a deceiver. He had spent so long perfecting the art of shaping reality with words, purely to enact misery.
So this is a god born of pure negative self-image and self-deception.
And he applied his skills inward. He said, "I lied to myself, told myself that I was a god. I was so convincing even I believed it. And you know what? It became true."
He literally spoke himself into a state of divinity through the sheer persistent power of his own perfected lies.
His godhood is an elaborate cosmic defense mechanism. He achieved reality-shaping power not through ascension or creation, but through the convincing perpetuation of a lie, first to the world and then most importantly to himself.
But the price of this power is absolute, which is why his current existence is one of eternal misery management. Divinity for Tangmazu is isolating.
He holds this terrifying specific knowledge that his power is conditional. It would all unravel if he ever stopped being alone.
If I ever let go of my agony, if I ever let myself care.
He is trapped by the very trauma he sought to avenge. He's condemned to replicate that agony forever just to exist. He has to maintain the agony, the isolation, and the absence of care to maintain his reality-shaping power.
The moment he connects, finds peace, or feels empathy, the lie that made him a god will dissolve. He woke up from this dream feeling hopeless.
And the final, tragic symbol that closes this psychological deep dive is the finished artifact, when all the splinters are assembled.
It forms a stone carving of a fruit they used to gather from the shore, sweet and juicy like summer, now lost forever.
That sweet, juicy fruit represents the tranquility and simple joy of the haven that was destroyed by his lie. The god he became is the manifestation of the life he destroyed.
A constant, tangible reminder of the peace he can never regain.
His power is an endless, agonizing echo of a mistake he made as a child, cemented by the necessity of eternal isolation.
All right, so we've explored immense power born from accident, from devastating grief, consuming hunger, and crippling psychological trauma. The common thread running through Grithkul, Abereth, and Tangmazu is, well, its volatility, subjectivity, and ultimate severance from their original state.
Which is why we need to introduce a counterpoint, an entity whose power is structured, predictable, and defined by merit, the goddess of justice.
She provides a necessary anchor in a metaphysical landscape that's been warped by the emotional chaos of the others.
This is the role of impartial judgment. She's described simply as the just goddess, presiding over us all. Her domain is impartial judgment, offering a system where transformation and power are earned.
It's not accidentally acquired or desperately consumed.
Exactly. Her process is clinical, transparent, and absolute. It occurs in her court, where she weighs the supplicant's very essence. The ritual is explicit. She shall weigh your mind in one hand, your heart in the other.
And that weighing is critical, isn't it? It implies a demand for both rational thought, the mind, and emotional integrity, the heart.
Yes. She doesn't just judge your actions. She judges the total coherence of your internal state. Are your motivations aligned with your intellect? Are your feelings corrupting your judgment? The goal is internal harmony, judged externally.
And the verdict dictates your fate entirely. If she finds you wanting, if that internal scale tips toward corruption or chaos, death is the sentence.
But if you are found worthy, the reward is immense. The loyalty and love of an empire. The stakes are cosmic, but the rules are objective.
This stands in such direct contrast to the arbitrary nature of the other entities.
Completely. Grethkul's judgment is based on her internal personal weeping. Abereth's judgment is based on who he decides to consume to satisfy his monstrous hunger. Tangmazu's influence is pure, arbitrary malice designed to spread paranoia.
And the goddess of justice offers a path defined by clear, quantifiable merit.
Which brings us to the nature of worthiness. Before her, the source's stress, nothing remains hidden. There's an expectation of complete transparency, both internally and externally. You cannot fool the scale.
So she doesn't judge by surface appearance or a momentary mistake, but by fundamental character structure.
And she actively uses adversity as her tool to determine that fundamental character. Adversity in her system isn't a punishment, it's a revelation. It reveals old flaws and new strengths.
Her justice system is designed to test your internal coherence under duress.
You may appeal her verdict, but the sources stress that justice favors only the truly worthy. Meeting her challenge leads not just to salvation or survival, but to a profound reward.
Right.
A kingdom beyond compare.
This is the antithesis of the other transformations. Grethkul gained power by destroying her loyal followers.
Abereth gained power by consuming life force and abandoning his offspring.
And Tangmazu gained power by perfecting lies and choosing eternal isolation. These powers required severance and self-annihilation.
The goddess of justice, however, offers a system of transformation based on integration, the reconciliation of the mind and the heart. Her power is acquired through merit, character, and necessary transparency.
She empowers those who prove their coherence and strength under duress. She represents the fixed point of objective, structured consequence in a metaphysical landscape defined by subjective agony.
She offers a path where trauma and transformation can lead to constructive power, but only if the individual embraces transparency and demonstrates internal, earned worthiness. It stands against the accidental, traumatic, or selfish routes chosen by the others.
So, after all that, what does this all mean? We've charted the origins of immense power and transformation by treating their lore as these intense, vivid biographical accounts.
It's been quite a journey.
We saw a traveler's casual naming create a mother goddess of despair. A scholar's escalating intellectualized thirst turn him into a consuming cloven monster. and a child's devastating lie elevate him into a cosmic trickster defined by the agony of isolation.
We've mapped the psychological path from scholar to monster, from mother to scourge, and from child to cosmic trickster. And what stands out most profoundly is that this level of destructive, reality-shaping power,
Yeah.
it's often not earned through noble or moral endeavors. It's born from the extreme, overwhelming consumption or expression of suffering, and it's compounded by these profound acts of severance. The consequences of a single pivotal moment, whether it's an idle name, a small deception, or a selfish consumption, can reverberate across existence forever.
The narrative tension in all these tales is just excruciating. Grothkul's ascension demanded the murder of her last loyalists, severing her connection to humanity.
Aberath's power requires the relentless, unending consumption of souls, sacrificing his academic self for perpetual hunger.
Tengmazu achieved divinity only by embracing total isolation and perpetual agony, fearing the dissolution of his power should he ever let go of his pain.
They all found power in a desperate act of final separation, the removal of that final human cord. Their ultimate power rests on severance and the embrace of an unchanging fundamental agony.
Which stands in such stark opposition to the path of the goddess of justice, which demands the integration and testing of one's entire self. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. In the stories of Grithkul, Aberath, and Tangmazu, their transformation was complete only after they severed their final ties, killing their last followers, accepting perpetual hunger, or choosing eternal isolation.
So the question is isolation a prerequisite for this kind of immense destructive power, or is it merely the inevitable, crushing result of achieving it?
And if the just goddess requires coherence, integrity, and connection, does that mean that truly stable, worthy power can only be achieved by refusing the path of separation, no matter how high the cost of the test?
Something to mull over as you navigate your own small world, built atop the ruins of these giants.